Organisma, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.organisima.com. Organisma, New York. Your beauty is our duty. Organisma, New York.
Well, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio. Your host, Hurricane H here. A new day, a new show, a new topic, a new guest with a very interesting topic today. And this topic will be led by our guest, of course. And she's an author, a writer, multiple books, but with a tendency to cover an element that I think all can use in our life. And we live in a world that is very funny, very interesting, very crazy, whatever we can describe it a lot of ways. And one thing, as humans, we behave differently based on a lot of things. And one of the things that drives our behavior is emotion. And emotion is a big deal. People do crazy things for emotion, and they do good things and bad things, and you name it, it's emotion driven most of the time. And so today we're gonna tackle the topic of emotional detox. How do we really detox from our emotions, or have a better way of handling life and our emotions? And no one can actually give us this particular answer better than our guest tonight, Sherianna Boyle. Again, famous author, writer, speaker. She's been all over the place, and really, she's been quoted in a lot of magazines, and she's just awesome. And we're glad to have you. So, Sherianna, welcome to the show. And we've been looking forward to this particular episode today. And so I'm happy. How are you? Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm great. Thank you for having me and for talking about emotions. I think it's so important, right? Right. It's always important, but particularly right now.
Oh, that's the key word. I mean, I've had various guests talking about different angles, especially during the pandemic, after the pandemic, before the pandemic. But really, you're right. It is a tough time for humanity as a whole. And some people have different ways of dealing with what's going on around them. And but before we get to all that, so let's just get to know you a little bit, your background, and where did you get started, and then what brought you into the writing of those books, and specifically the topic of detoxification, emotions, anxiety, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, Emotional Detox was actually my 7th book, and previous to that, I had been writing about anxiety quite a bit, more from the standpoint of mindfulness and how to reduce symptoms and alleviate yourself from symptoms of anxiety. And so I had written several books and parenting. My roots are, I'm an adjunct psychology professor, and I was a school psychologist for years. So that's kind of how I got into the field with working with families. And when I started raising my children, I left my position and I started working at night. And so I was working predominantly with families who were struggling. So I would go out at night and I would teach classes about development and all this kind of stuff. And so that sort of several books there. And then one day I started to say to myself, I really want to get into emotions because I really believe that this is really what's going on, even with the anxiety piece. And so eventually Emotional Detox came to be, and then Emotional Detox for Anxiety followed. And then my latest book is Emotional Detox Now, which is practices that I've created with a system called C.L.E.A.N.S.E, which is the 7 steps of an emotional detox. So I guess to answer the short part of that is through my research and my work and helping people with anxiety, I really started to hone in on emotions. And that is how I came up with, really how I define anxiety as an emotion looking to be processed, but can't because we won't let it. So that's how anxiety is now defined in the book, Emotional Detox for Anxiety. And I'll say that again because it's a little different. Anxiety is an emotion attempting to be processed, but can't because we won't let it. So that's my, part of the foundation of what an emotional detox is all about.
Well, that is big. I mean, first of all, congrats on all the books and really the work that you're doing, because I'm sure you've been helping a lot of people manage this. And I don't think of anyone that can say that this is not about me. we all go through some sort of level of anxiety. We all get through emotions, and there's a lot of drivers to it. And you've been tackling this for a minute. When I'm being a little funny about the minute, but you've been around long enough to do enough good work and really drive a lot of change in a lot of families. And again, being an educator and seeing that in first hands and taking it in your hands to make a difference, that is a great thing. And you talked about anxiety, anxiety, and you define it in a very simple way. You're right. I mean, people get anxiety and anxious when they just don't know what to do, how to, whatever they have in their mind, they can't handle it, right? I mean, it's just like, oh my God, I got to get this done, and then they get excited, right? So I'm just being a little, animated about it. but the fact of the matter is, it is big and it's important. And you talked briefly about the practices that you have also established and the 7 steps, and we'll get to those in a minute. But let's talk in general about some of the generic scenarios that drive people into anxiety, and also like really that kind of play with them, or emotions and feelings, and then therefore they get a little not in a good place. At least based on your experience and all.
Sure.
I'm sure you've seen it all and you've heard it all.
Yeah. I think it's more the way that they manage their anxiety. And some of that is because in the field of psychology, that's what we were training people to do that for a long time. I was doing it as well. We were, back in the days when I was a school psychologist, I was training people on how to cope with how they feel, right? We were big on coping skills. And so what I say now is that we've kind of created a bunch of cope addicts. So, and what I've learned about emotions is, they're not meant to be managed and they're not meant to be coped with. They're meant to be felt. And I'm not saying coping skills aren't helpful and they don't have a time and they don't have a place, but what they do have is an expiration date. So I may go into the store and I may see that there's a really long line ahead of me. And I was hoping to get out of there, quick because I got places to go and things to do. And maybe I'm going to be late and now I'm anxious. And I cope with that, right? Maybe I look at my phone or I read a magazine or I take a breath, whatever it is that I have learned how to cope with those emotions. Once I get through that line, I get myself in a safe situation. At some point, I need to process whatever emotions were coming up in that moment. So that's where the coping skill loses, it expires, right? So you don't just cope and then move on and go to the next thing, because what happens is it just collects until we either blow up or break down, and then we're overwhelmed. So what happens with emotions is you have to just acknowledge, okay, that was a situation where I was coping. There's definitely some emotions in me that I'm maybe stuffing or ignoring or avoiding. And I want to make sure that I take some time to allow myself to experience them. And that's where cleanse the system comes in, which I know we'll get to later, but that's where it's nice to have a system, because really none of us were taught how to feel. We were taught to manage. We were taught to cope. We were taught to regulate. Those aren't feeling, in my opinion.
Well, actually, you bring in a great point, because I never actually would have put myself in a position to identify either one of those as one or the other. It's just like to your point, we just don't know about it. We don't even think about it. We feel something, it's your emotion, but you're right. We cope, we deal, but we might just be totally unsure about what that feeling is or what we're actually really doing. And I think
Yeah.
most of us, we're not really questioning, like, is this an emotion? Is this like, what am I dealing with this? I don't think we're
Yeah.
like sitting there. You're right. I mean, we just get into a position, things don't, I mean, as simple, we live in a society where we're like running, running, running. I mean, you're on the East Coast, so you know exactly. And we
Yes.
just, there is no sleep here. It's just like crazy days, one thing after the other. You move, traffic everywhere, you have to deal with a lot of stuff at work, and you go shopping, to your point, it could be a problem, right? You went in lines, and so we all kind of like, we try to take, as much as we can, find a way, listen to music,
Yeah.
build this, but then ultimately, to your point, it starts adding up. And one day
Yeah.
you just snap out, like poof, and that can be taken on your family, can be taken at work, can be taken somewhere in the street. I mean, we've seen movies about that. There are a few couple movies out there actually that have kind of almost addressed this issue when someone really just loses it, and really that's a big deal, and we don't want that. We want people to
Or we get
hopefully.
sick, or we get fit, our immune system breaks down, or, we get headaches, or I mean, so many things happen when we bottle that up and we just shove it away and move on to the next thing. It creates wear and tear for
Well,
sure.
that's actually a great point, because people listening or watching, you might not add up to the idea that you will get sick, that it will affect other things in your body, and ultimately you're not going to be the way you want it. I mean, everybody wants to be the best they can be. I mean, in the best shape, the best health, the best mental state, but every single thing around us really is meant right now to actually almost making us not be that way, unless we figure out a way and get formulas to help us that way. And you did find a formula, and we're going to talk about that formula. So I'm excited about, we're going to help some people today,
Yeah.
and hey, listen, maybe I would be the first, candidate here and learning the tricks. I need to learn, and I sometimes I apply. Maybe you can apply it on me. I don't know, but definitely the idea is to bring to the audience that anyone out there can be subject to this. Anyone out there has
We're all
become
doing it. It's
exactly.
happening to everybody. I don't even think you can separate it anymore. I mean, even I will go into I call it reactivity, the difference is I'm aware of what's happening and I make time to process it. And the good news is the more you process what you're feeling, the less you will react in situations, the calmer you do become. It's not that it goes away per se. I mean, you're human. We do have feelings, but once you take time to process them, then you get the truth, right? And the reality is it's usually not about the fact that you're going to be late. Okay. It's not about that, right? So you're in line, you're upset, you're going to be late. That's a symptom, right? Once you start to process what you're feeling, you realize, that when I'm late, it makes me feel a certain way. It may make me feel inadequate. It may make me feel like a failure. It may make me feel sad or overwhelmed. Everybody's different. And that's what needs to be processed inside, is that when I feel like or overextended, or unsupported, that's the truth. It's not about the stupid line.
Well, you're
right?
right. Yeah.
It's deeper than that, but we'll never get to that if we're just running to the next thing.
Well, I'll give you a good example. I mean, this is just about me, and and I think a lot of people can relate to this. So, like, I've been in the corporate world for a long time, and it is pretty stressful. And one thing that I've noticed over the culture of corporations and corporate America is, like you have to be a certain time at a meeting and things like that. And the higher you have, your hierarchies, sometimes your meetings start at 7:30 in the morning. And what I realized over the years that it doesn't have to be that way. And as a matter of fact, what I've noticed that every time there was a meeting that was put in and early on, 8:30, 9 o'clock, whatever, and you have to go through traffic, you're traveling about a couple hours, you're like stressed out the whole night before. You're thinking anticipation is there, and you're like all over the place. And then you get there, you're not even sleeping well. You're like, you probably have, not enough coffee in your system or whatever, or you just put some coffee and caffeine just to get you going, but you're not really in the best state. So you can't even produce when you go there. And so the whole process and the anticipation of this, drives you nuts. Same thing when you talk about being late, that's really another one, right? You get in traffic on, it's really you're anticipating the reaction of everybody else, and then you're reacting to that reaction, before it happens. And now you're like, your mind is going all over the place, and it's not a good place to be. A lot of people fall into this particular problem.
Yeah. So true. I mean, the corporate world, and maybe it was shaped this way where, somehow we got away from the, 9 to 5, right? Because of technology. Yeah. And now it's become almost like the work world in some ways. It used to be where your family was your biggest triggers, right? Because we love our family and they might trigger us, and it might be, we might get into, conflicts about that, and that would be difficult. And when you go to work and you have a break, right? Remember those? I don't know if you remember those days. I remember when work kind of felt like a break, right? Like, oh my gosh, I just need to get away from my family. And now what's happening is our work day is extending. It's almost like the work, you're with a bunch of family members who are driving you crazy. And they're like, they're calling me at 7:30 and they want me here. And, it's kind of like, having, my partner call me now. So we get triggered, and people are having a hard time separating now the two and putting it down and walking it away. And in some ways, what's happening, what I see happening, is patterns are being reflected to us through our coworkers. It's like, why does this person drive me nuts? Why? And the thing is usually they might have a similar pattern as you, and you're actually playing this out similar to what used to occur in families or for children on the playground. They play these things out and they work through them. But because of this, the way we have changed in society, not enough of that working through things is happening in the home. So it's all kind of getting muddled, is what I'm seeing.
Well, it is real, and you really hit on the concept of family. And work has become, for the most part, when you're like working now many days and you spend more hours in there, you're probably like, that's becoming your first family. You spend more time with them sometimes than your own family. And one of the elements you mentioned, which is, I think, a key element here, is awareness. Most of the people are not aware when they get to this stage or they feel in these feelings. They just basically are totally unaware of it. It's just that they're reacting to it. So to your point, you have the awareness to kind of step back, watch it, and kind of almost evaluate yourself and reset. A lot of people don't have that ability to do it, or at least they're not seeing it because they're not trained to it. I mean, it takes a lot of skill and time and practice to be there. and that is not, and I think hopefully by today, throughout the show, we can actually deliver some of the methods that we can help people with to really be aware. Oh, wait a minute, I'm doing it again. It's getting there. Nope, I'm not going to get anybody to get to under my skin. And that's how you control a little bit the emotion, I think. And I use some of those practices myself. Like, when I see, something, like, I just walk away and just walk away, do something else, find something else. Don't keep the argument. And that's the other thing. You're back and forth, and it escalates. And it could be at work. It could be in the street. We've seen neighbors, fight. We've seen, things escalate for no reason, for parking spots. It's like, it's crazy. This world is the way we actually are behaving. And it's all like, everybody's emotional. You talk to someone right the wrong way, forget about it. They just, oof. It's like they were ready just for you. So the minute it's like you're talking about trigger, you just like press the button and boom, that's it in your face. Yeah. So it is challenging. But then awareness. How do you advise folks to kind of exercise that part? Because they have to be literally slick about it. Like, again, it's happening so fast that we don't see it.
It is. We don't see it. Well, the first thing I want to say to people is I've been doing this for well over 20 years now, and in this field. And Emotional detox really kind of changed things for me. I'd been writing on mindfulness. I was doing practices. I was teaching. Everyone was loving the work I was producing. But I have to say, my level of awareness was not as nearly what it is today, until emotional detox came to be. And the only reason I say that is, here I was all trained and I wasn't as aware of the way that I was stuffing. And so what emotional detox did for me was I had to dismantle a lot of what we were trained about emotions, because I realized that I can't really make these changes until I unlearn some things. And one is that, in the Emotional Detox Foundation, all emotions are good so long as they're processed. That is one of the things that it's built upon. They're like pillars. All your emotions are good so long as they're processed. So that means there's no bad emotion. There's no negative emotion. And I know that's tricky because we've been trained to believe that there's good and there's bad, and we only allow ourselves to really feel the good. And, we worry and try to control the bad. And that has to stop, because it's not working, for one. And that's what really impeded my level of awareness. As soon as you stop judging something as good or bad, they're all good when they're processed. The other thing I had to really unlearn is a lot of us are confusing. So you talk about somebody is emotional. They get angry about a parking spot. To me, that's not an emotion. That's a reaction. And we want to get clear. Emotions make you feel good when they're processed. If they're not processed, you're probably in a reaction, and it's not the same. So, doesn't it just bring clarity to the whole thing? And as soon as I started to flip things, my awareness changed. And that's when I became like, okay, I'm reacting. Now, why am I reacting? Because I'm triggered. Why am I triggered? Because emotions have memory. They remember according to a feeling. It may be a different face. It may be a different situation. It may be a different parking spot, but the feeling is the same. And you probably felt that feeling a long time ago, and you didn't allow yourself to feel it. You managed it, you oppressed it, and you suppressed it. And it's still coming up because it needs to be processed.
I love the breakdown that you did, and really like removing one versus the other, because you're right. Going crazy for a parking spot, that's a reaction to some feeling that you have, because you probably have been dealing with the same situation over in time, and it just accumulated. But you used the word earlier, mindfulness, and that is a big word. I mean,
it is.
Understanding that concept in its own, I think that's a big deal for anyone, because we are not so mindful of everything. I mean, we're sometimes actually heedless. I think the opposite, not even thinking about things, because we're not really questioning and kind of processing things all the time. I think that's what it is. We're zombies in a way. We're just conditioned or robotic to a certain level, but we're not. I mean, when I say we're not, I'm not generalizing, because I'm sure there are people out there that are very processing, every single thing, and they see everything for what it is, and they calculate risk and do things, in a very quick way. But the majority of us just go about things, I think, and enjoy our lives, but then also are getting a lot of feed, from all different things. And they just get in there, and we are not aware that this is a behavior. Like that when you tell someone, "Oh, you've been doing this," have I? Everybody's noticing, but you. I mean, that's the other thing. Like people see it, but you always deny it. Like, no, I'm not like that's not me. I can't be that way. You can't tell me that's my case. That's not how I am. Oh, you're always defensive. No, I'm not defensive. You're defensive. Yeah, and you get people to get to that point, but they're not aware because they didn't stop for a minute and watch. Like, wait a minute. Oh. You said it. Good.
Yeah. And I use the word mindful steps so that people know that, the nature of the cleanse. However, I don't know if you've noticed this. Sometimes I get a little put off by the word mindfulness. I don't know if that happens to you, Hurricane, mainly because I think there's a lot of interesting things happening where you have people saying, be mindful, be mindful. And meanwhile, you're looking at them going, well, you're not being mindful.
Well, again,
you're telling me to be mindful. Right. And so, I don't want people to think that this is going to be a process where you're going to be, wearing white and you're going to be sitting cross-legged and you're going to be, I don't know. It's just not real, right? It's not real. It's a matter of paying attention of when you get triggered, right? And what happens when you're triggered? You get tight, you get tense. You feel like sometimes you might have an impulse, right? You want to control something. You might even make, I was just working with someone who literally like started grunting, like when you say, oh, you got to go to the dump or something, right? Got to take out the trash. Oh, the grunt, right? That just being aware of, okay, well, there's something there, right? That grunt means something. There's an emotion there that, and being more interested and curious about each other. I don't expect anybody around me to, sit down and meditate if that's not for them. But I am more curious when I hear a person grunt or myself grunt. I say, what was that? There's clearly something in me that is feeling something if I'm making the strange noise right now, right? So, it's about the trash. What about the trash? When I have to take the trash, or maybe it's, when I'm interrupted, could not even be it. It's probably not about the trash. Probably just being, when I'm in my groove and somebody asks me to do something, it makes me feel right. And, frustrated or annoyed, or these are feelings, right? And we just want to start to pay attention. How do I become aware of when I'm shoving and something's coming up in me to be felt? And it honestly takes time. And I support people all the time. But once they get it, it's like training wheels. You put them on and you take them off, and then it's smooth sailing. So everybody can do this, no matter what age or, background or ability. It doesn't matter. Everybody can feel their feelings. We just need some guidance.
Clearly. And you actually doing that. You just did it. Just for the example, you were breaking it down. You were asking the questions like why and what would be the reason behind that why, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what the key element here is, like to be able to know when it's happening and then question why it's happening. If you can do that, I mean, and most of us, again, may not be doing that exercise. Like, we're just, I mean, as simple as when we talk, right? Sometimes we say things. Sometimes I say, I'm not aware that I'm saying that. It's just a filler in the discussion. But like, I see that sometimes I'm like, why am I saying like too many knows in one sentence? But you get to see it sometimes to review it yourself. Like, and sometimes we don't have that ability to be on a camera or seeing a show, for example, or hearing yourself. You just don't know. And no one, sometimes a lot of people around you may not tell you, dude, hey, you're doing this. Maybe some of the close folks, they care. They say, you got this habit, you need to see what's up. But sometimes we're not even able to accept that critic, or criticism from others. And that's the other part. Either we have to be aware or someone's going to make you aware. And now it's whether you accept it or not. And then your reaction now is, again, driven by emotions. Am I being undermined here? I'm feeling a little excited. And it can be a challenge. I mean, it's not as simple as 1, 2, 3, but I think it can be done. I mean, you've demonstrated right now slowly how it can be worked, and we can use that tactic.
Yeah, it's just paying attention, and there are ways that we give ourselves time to process something. So you're kind of showing what it looks like when you're just processing your thoughts, right? So you're processing your next thought. Sometimes when we say, and I do that too, it just is a sign that I'm in the middle of formulating my next question, right? It gives me space and time to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just at the world might say, oh, they're saying too many hums, or but that once you really get to know yourself, oh, that's what I do when I'm actually formulating my question. It gives me time, right? And as you start to understand yourself, and you allow yourself to, now you can go deeper. You can say, and when I give myself that time, it makes me feel. It doesn't always have to be bad, right? It's just a misperception on another. I understand what's happening when that is happening, when someone's asking a question. I get that, but I'm also a school psychologist, so I understand how people learn and how people. I'm the same way. I need a little bit of time to formulate my next thought sometimes. And, as we get to understand each other, and then we're not so hard on each other, and you become compassionate, and you start to, not to judge so much. I think judgment can be so hurtful. I mean, we all do it. But even just those little things can really poke at somebody and hold them back. And when we feel, I mean, that's really what my mission is to get, I always say my mission is to get the world feeling again, because I really believe it will be the place that we all can live in peacefully, because we can, just give each other the space that we need to feel and process.
That's a wonderful, actually, mission. I have to say, literally wanting the people to feel right and feel good and do the right, and enjoy the life. I mean, that's awesome in its own as a true mission. Yeah. So, congrats on that, and kudos to you for it. It's a great thing. Yeah. We're talking about all this, but you mentioned early on something about something that is happened to people that drives this, right? It's certainly not overnight. It's adding up, but now that means we have to touch on people's maybe upbringing, youth experiences, relationships. I mean, that's the other part that I think that impacts things. People have gone through good, bad, ugly, negative, positive experiences, and all that stuff is somewhere in there, just accumulating. And some people hold on to that stuff. They don't have ways to manage it out, and therefore all it takes is one element and it's kind of over, right? And so as you help people, do you find yourself trying to identify some of the stuff and at least getting them to identify some of the stuff to be able to deal, or not?
Sometimes I have to keep boundaries because I'm not a therapist. However, the core book, Emotional Detox, the one with the white and the colors, that one is more of my personal journey. And I think that I learned more from that than anything. So when I that's my own personal emotional detox and what I was detoxing myself from. So I lost your question in there. What was the past?
Yes.
So when I was on my emotional detox journey, I went to therapy, and I went to several therapists because I was having trouble finding one that fit the one, that happens. You have to find the right fit. Mm-hmm. So basically the short story is I did all the research on the book. I wrote a proposal. It takes a lot of time to write a proposal to get picked up by a traditional publisher. And I got picked up by Simon & Schuster to write Emotional Detox. And then literally about 5 weeks later, I was hit with a horrible, horrible emotional trauma. And so at that point, I just was like, I can't write this book. I can't do this. I went to them. I'm in crisis. My family's in crisis. And they said, take your time. When you can, do it. And I was like, okay. So for the first time in my life, I didn't have a deadline. I didn't even know if it was going to write the book. Quite honestly, I didn't know when or how. So in that process of going through my own emotional detox, and that was the priority at the time, I said, I need to go on my own emotional heck with everybody else. And I learned that I'm in therapy. And the therapist asked a question and she got interrupted and walked away. And as I'm sitting there, I heard a really, really strong voice in my, wherever it comes from, God, whatever. And it told me, it said something, and basically what it didn't know at the time was it was giving me the second step of the cleanse. So I heard this voice after I went through the session, I left and I quit therapy. And I never went back again, not because it wasn't good, because I was hearing this voice and I knew that something really important was coming in to help me. But during that time period, what was difficult for me in my journey of an emotional detox was going to the past. I didn't think that I could really move forward by going back to the past. So the beautiful part of the cleanse is you are touching on the past without getting into it. And I think that gets in the way for people. They're afraid to go back because they're afraid it's going to knock them down and they're not going to be able to get back up. And I can honestly say, I totally get what you mean, because I felt the same way. I thought, I have to go home. I have 3 kids. I have a job. I don't have the luxury of not working and just going and healing, right? I have to keep going here. And this is too much for me to keep revisiting. So that's what the voice gave me. It gave me the cleanse, which again allows you to process emotions from the past. But my motto is, and that's why my latest book is called Emotional Detox Now, is all emotional processing happens in the now.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I mean, it is, you put that, I mean, but the experience itself, the fact that you were given the opportunity, I mean, I have to say the publishers were awesome to give you the opportunity.
I know.
They could have said, you know what, whatever.
They could have gave it to someone else. I know they could have stole it, but they didn't. They had a lot of integrity. That was Simon and Schuster. So definitely.
Awesome stuff, because they gave you the opportunity to really see yourself and deliver, because you did.
Yeah.
And you delivered in the best, and you didn't stop. You moved on to next and next, and now you have a whole system in place. So those were a couple of pieces of the cleansing, stages that you've used. Are there any others, or are we going to talk about that in the 7 steps as a whole?
So I always use the same cleanse. It never really changes for me anymore. I do know other techniques because I've written about them and I do believe in them. And now and then I'll pull from them. It's always, they're in the toolbox per se, but I really always come back to the cleanse. It just feels like home to me. Those 7 steps. And so what was your question?
No. So what I mean is that I thought when we talked about the cleanse your experience, we talked about a couple elements. I wasn't sure if that was part of the 7 steps, and let's just.
Oh yes, the second step. So I channeled them. They came through, and I practiced with them, and then eventually wrote about them. And what's nice is, so it's not separate 7 steps. They really flow together. So the C is clear reactivity, which is some, in the new book, I give like 50 ways that you can clear reactivity from the body. And basically what you're doing is you're letting your body know that you're choosing to process an emotion. You're not going to revisit the past and re-traumatize yourself. That's what that step 1 is about. And that's what I learned from my own experience, was we really can get re-traumatized. And there's a fine line. So we have to be mindful of that. So that first step is so important, because you want to let the body know that's not my intention here to bring up old stuff and put you through all that again. The second step is where you identify what you were asking earlier about the awareness of identifying how you feel, identifying how the situation you're in makes you feel. And I give guidance on how to do that. So by now you've let your body know that you're going to be processing. You've identified what you feel. And then the next step is about really the detox part, the E, which is called emit. So the L is look inward, the E is emit. And that is where we create vibration so that now you can release the reactions and all the ways that you've been suppressing everything that you've been feeling. And that's what we're releasing there. We're not getting rid of emotions. We're getting rid of the way you've oppressed them. And then the A is activate. And that is now starting to change the brain, because the brain will associate things with old reminders and we get triggered, and we have to start to do that. So activate is as another mindful step of how to change your brain so that you can have a new experience in the same situation, right? So now you're on A, right? C.L.E.A.N. Okay. N is nourish. Okay. Nourish is about really sinking into the experience. And that's where you get a little bit deeper, because what you want to do is you want to start to integrate those emotions. Now you're in higher level emotions, right? So you're feeling calm, or you're feeling more peaceful. And I always think of it like marinating, right? Like you would marinate a piece of food. You want to really saturate yourself in that. And then we're in S, which is surrender, right? And I teach people how to do that with, it's a simple surrender statement. And then E is called ease, which is you basically, it's oneness. It's, you are that. You always have been that. It's just, we started to believe that we were separate. So that's the process of the cleanse.
So now you said it's a flowing process. So is there a time frame for this to happen, or, obviously everybody is different, right? So it may not be, no one is going to be like, it's going to be done in a week.
No. So initially, it's interesting you say that, because when I wrote Emotional Detox, the core book, I really believed I'm going to do this for about 6 months and then I'll be on my way. But that's not what happens. Well, one is you don't feel the same when you stop, right? You don't feel good. So you want to continue because it works. And so it's like a lifestyle, it's like saying, I'm going to eat more vegetables. I'm going to start feeling my emotions, and I'm going to create that lifestyle for myself. And so I have a couple ways. I have the newest book where I've written 135 cleanses in it for people. And then I have the platform emotionaldetoxnow.com, which is where people can come on Zoom like you and I are now, and I will take them through a process, a detox, depending on how much support they need, whether it's once a week, a few times a month. And so the intention there is, when you're guided, it's about 10 minutes for a cleanse, just so you know, per cleanse, but depends. I mean, about 12 minutes, but when I do it on my own, it's about 10-minute practice. Yeah.
Wow.
Sometimes quicker.
Well, I mean, to be honest, it sounds awesome, because going through the whole process, just listening to it, it's really, it kind of speaks on its own to the formula, and it just guides. So if you see it and really have the definition, you'll be like, oh, I see what I need to be doing. So it's really in your face kind of process, and so you'll get going that way. That's awesome. But are there any factors that can kind of inhibit someone from really kind of maximizing all these 7 steps? I mean, sometimes, again, elements in our lives can be problematic, or people in our lives can be problematic. Would that be something that they can live with and still be able to do this? Because I can go through the process, but if I'm always getting negative vibes, I may not be able to, I'm trying to be as good as I can, but someone's always telling me like, well, it's not working. You're still the same. And again, that could be the case, right? I mean, we all have someone around us that is negative, unfortunately. We try to stay away from them, but
Yeah. And I completely understand what that's like. If you feel like you have to live with your trigger, basically, is what you're saying. Exactly. Right? And so it is possible. I think the key is that you just, you can't rush it, and you have to be consistent with your practice. When you start to feel, you have to remember it's a ripple effect. So feeling states are much stronger than non-feeling states. Non-feeling state is a reaction, right? That's what makes people feel like they have to protect themselves or guard themselves, or they might run, they do what they do to be able to manage that state. But the calmer you become through cleansing, the more you process, what you do is you bring vibration into your home. So it's kind of like opening your windows. The house feels different, right? You're going to, and you have to believe that your emotions are that powerful. You can change the atmosphere in the home. Now, is it all on you? No, but you can, but it does take commitment. And that's why I started the platform, because I realized, people love it and they really need that support. I wish I had the support when I was going through my emotional detox. I didn't have it, but if it were there, I would have taken it, so yeah, it's absolutely possible. I don't believe, obviously, if you're in an abusive situation, you need to get out, and that's different. But I do feel that you can grow a lot, but it has to be consistent for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And so ultimately, mindset also has to be the ultimate, factor here for people.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to go through the process. And really, it's like I had the show the other day. We talked about hypnosis, and how people sometimes are resistant to hypnosis because they just don't want to get into it. And some folks are just like subjective to it. Like they just kind of like, okay, take me, I'm good, and then they get all this stuff. So it's that kind of thing. Like you have to really be willing to get into this journey and make a difference. And you said it. Imagine if you had this opportunity, when you had your own experience, you would have loved it. You said, I'll take it. Everybody today we're doing this show is to bring this closer to people that may think that there are not, there's nothing available for them, or there's not an opportunity for them to be better. There is, and we're talking about it today. There is a system. There is a platform. There's someone who can share true value because they've experienced it themselves. So the resource is there. It's just a matter of the willingness to be able to do it. And first of all, the other thing that we need to be also clear about is that we have to be honest with ourselves, because people sometimes are like, no, I don't have any problems. I'm good. We're in denial. The denial factor is a big deal too. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm good. I got this. And sometimes, that's to the detriment of your own and whoever is around you. So you have to be aware that, yes, open up. And you know what? You don't have to go to a psychiatrist. As fun as it sounds, that we do. I have an actual live Q&A with a psychiatrist every month. And how hard is it to get people to actually go on the show and ask questions? People are not willing to ask. Even if it's anonymous, you don't have to say your name. You just give me anything. But it's an opportunity to ask the right question that may be driving you crazy, right? Or not literally, but you know what I mean. So it's like in your mind. Same thing here. There is a system, but if you're not willing to really open up, and you're not willing to face it, you went to therapy, you said, and that wasn't the route. It was good, but you found a better way, and you delivered it, and so that's the way it is. So it's a challenge. Again, society is difficult as it is. Now, in your experience, because you earlier in the beginning of the show, we said about today more than ever, ultimately we're talking about the pandemic, and we're talking about the whole dynamic of what's been happening around the pandemic. In your experience, I know you've been doing this long enough, but in the last 2 years, have you seen an influx, of people reaching out, or like an increase in people that really needed to do this? Because I think people were stressed enough that the emotions were very, very volatile.
Well, the part of the reason I created the platform was because what I was seeing in the beginning, yes, I was swamped. I'll be honest, I was swamped. I was like, oh my God. And I was swamped. And then, what I do see is a lot of people are very fearful of their finances, are fearful of, the future, and they're hanging on a little bit, not just trying to hunker down, and that's why I decided to get the platform going, like more of a community place where you can come and just get that support. And so Yeah, I did see a huge jump. And then I've seen it's just been going on a real long time now. And now I see people kind of trying to drag people to me. Like my brother really needs to see you. My kids really need to, like, everybody's wanting, right? And they're trying. I always say, yes, the resources are here. And I know denial can, if you're listening to the show, you're probably not in full. I think the ones that are in full denial don't actually listen to your show, right? You wouldn't be here. And I think, God works in mysterious ways. And I do believe that you just let it go. Like, don't put so much pressure on yourself, because even doing anything, or just hearing the conversation, just that's enough, right? I mean, sometimes that's all you can handle, is just a listening to a show for an hour, and that's fine. And that's another thing I learned from being in it, my own journey. When you're in true trauma, sometimes you can't handle too much too quick. And sometimes it's too fast. Sometimes, you get scared, and that is very, very normal. And so if you're just, listening to this show, just say to yourself, okay, that was something. And that's what I had in me today. And that's okay. That's enough. Don't say, oh, now I got to do this. Now I got to do this. It's enough. If I'm meant to be in your life, or the emotional detox is, or hurricane, we'll circle back in some way. God will bring it back into your life and show you. And you just have to let go and be guided. And if it's meant to be in another direction, then be guided there. But it's okay to not move quickly and to feel like you're a little paralyzed. I know what that's like. I've been there, and people don't get that unless they've been there. So that's my answer to that.
Sherianna, that's great advice. And you're right. I mean, slowly but surely, small steps, better late than never. We know a lot of expressions that can guide us when we are not sure, we're afraid. But I think it just beginning the journey is the key. Starting somewhere is the key. Nothing happens overnight, that's worth anything. And you have to take the time, especially, this is not something that, if you've been living with this for a long time and you had all this emotion, build up, and now you have to detox. I mean, we talk about detoxification for food and health in general. This is just mental, but everything takes time. You can't detox overnight. I mean, even if you do fasting and things, it's going to take some time to actually cleanse your body, right? Same concept here, but this is a little bit more, because it's the mind that's playing. So you're right. Go ahead.
The other thing I just want to highlight is, I'm not an either or. If you have a fabulous therapist, I'm not a instead of. I look at emotional detox as a supplement, like a vitamin to whatever you're doing, right? So if you have a therapist, if you go to the gym, if you've got a yoga, if you go hiking, if whatever you do, it's a supplement. It is not, oh, what do I do? Is this better than this? No, I don't want to be that. I'm not that. I am truly just supplementing whatever you already have going on in your life.
Well, thank you. I mean, actually, that's awesome, because you're right. I mean, sometimes we need more, it's not like this is not a substitute. This is something that you can add value.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned about, earlier yoga. You do yoga as well, right?
So I teach C.L.E.A.N.S.E yoga.
There you go.
and so that's on the platform as well. I teach that live a couple days a week on the platform, emotionaldetoxnow.com. And I take people through the cleanse every yoga class. So we go through an emotional detox as we're moving our body. And what's nice is you don't have to talk. I do all the talking, probably too much talking.
Listen, it's all right. It's all right.
But I do the talking, you do the moving and the breathing. And that's another way to get your detox in.
I bet you have a lot of friends that are enjoying your presence because they just getting all that benefit, right? You'll be like, hey, just talk to me. I'm gonna be
I'll
good.
just guide you through. You just do your thing. And we're on Zoom, so you just do whatever feels right for you. So
And that's awesome. I mean,
yeah.
you can reach a lot of people, and I'm assuming all over the world. It doesn't have to be in any particular space,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and that's beauty. I mean, you can reach and help people. That must give you a good feeling, a great feeling. I would say, like anytime you do something right by people, and it's I know it's always a good
Well,
feeling. It's
that's what I do it for. I mean, that, I have a team and everybody's kind of been working super hard at creating this platform, and I just, remind them, this is what gets us through, when you hear somebody say, this helped me, then all that sweating, all that
just
hard work, it's worth and you earned every moment of it because, you created that space for them. So it's not just me, we're a team that creates that space for people so
but
it's sort of smooth for them.
nothing like a good team, right? Well,
Yeah.
I have to say this. I mean, you're not only helping the individuals directly, because when you help someone, you're also helping everybody around them because, whatever they're going through, everybody around them is going to get a little bit of, positive or negative, depending on whatever their status is, right? If they're in a good place, everybody around them is going to feel that. It's a vibe, right? You said it. The vibration is going to be there. It's going to
Yeah.
be just energy levels are going to be, almost emitting to the others, as opposed to if they're not in a good place, everybody is. So I think a lot of people actually are benefiting from your work, not just the ones that are directly your customers or clients, right? So that's an awesome piece right there. So I have to say, I mean, I've enjoyed this, so much. It's great to have on the show and having this discussion, and frankly, I mean, I do want to potentially have this come back later on. We can do a
Yeah, I would
second
love
show,
to.
with
Yeah,
the
I
more.
grabbed my book because I was going to say I have so many cleanses in here for people. So I love that. That would be so fun.
Well, listen,
Yeah,
we can
yeah,
do that.
yeah.
And
Fun.
one thing, so you have the
Yeah.
platform. We'll have the link to it. We'll have the books also. Are they available on Amazon or?
It's emotionaldetoxnow.com. I don't know if the platform was live when you and I connected. So it's either sheriannaboyle.com, but that links you to the platform too. So,
Okay.
and the books are, everywhere that books are sold, but you can go to sheriannaboyle.com or emotionaldetoxnow.com.
Perfect. Okay. Well, we
Yeah.
will have that on the description of the show. Are there any last words of wisdom we can leave the audiences with right now?
I just always say your emotions matter. Processing them matters more. That's my mantra, my motto. And I also say that your emotions are enough. You know, we all have them. No shortage there.
I know
We all have an abundance of them, right? There's no, haves and haves nots when it comes to emotions. It just doesn't exist. So you have plenty. And, when you process them, then you get to really, learn, you really get to develop parts of yourself that you didn't even know you had. At least I know I didn't have some of the potential that I've seen in myself and my clients until I started processing, like, oh, I didn't even know I was capable of that. Right. But that's because of emotions.
listen, you're right. I mean, I think anyone, including myself, I think we can relate to that. We know that it's possible, and we should believe that it's possible. So I would say thank you for the insights here and for those great, nice little. They're simple concepts, but I think they're rich in deep concepts that anyone can really benefit from. So thank you for that. So folks, thank you for the opportunity today, Sherianna. That was a great time, and we had learned a lot. I've learned a lot, and I know anyone watching or listening right now is going to have a good place to go and find more resources and potentially even use the services. And God knows how many people could use this today. Unfortunately, that is the reality of things. But I think, at least we have a place to go and a resource. So thank you for that. So that being said, Cheriana, thank you for being on the show. It's been great. Folks, thank you for watching the iHealth channel. Listen to iHealth Radio. Hurricane H here with you. We'll see you at the next show, the next topic, and the next guest. Ciao for now. Bye-bye.